She thought she married a hero, but when Vanessa discovered her husband's secret drug empire, the man she trusted proved he'd do anything to protect his double life, even hire a hitman to take her out. This is the shocking story of betrayal, corruption, and a mayor's desperate attempt to silence the one person who knew too much. Sometimes, the people we trust the most hide the darkest secrets. Cedric Patterson's perfect family life was a lie, and when Vanessa exposed it, she became the target of a deadly plan. This is a tale of power, greed, and how far someone will go to keep their empire intact. Before we dive into this chilling story, like and subscribe to Crime Chronicles for more jaw-dropping tales of betrayal and crime. Cedric Patterson, the 42-year-old charismatic mayor of Birmingham, Alabama, had the kind of life many dreamed of. A strong public persona as a passionate community leader, he was beloved by his constituents for his speeches on equality, justice, and progress. His wife, Vanessa Patterson, was his perfect counterpart, 39 years old, a former corporate attorney who left the fast-paced world of law to fully support Cedric's rise in politics. Together, they were a power couple, the golden family in the heart of Alabama's political scene. They lived in a luxurious home in a prestigious part of Birmingham, their children, Jamal and Kayla, both excelling in school and extracurricular activities. Every Sunday, the Pattersons could be seen attending church together, radiating the image of a perfect, well-rounded family. Cedric's speeches were often accompanied by a flawless smile, and Vanessa, ever the supportive wife, was at his side, acting as the epitome of grace and elegance. The public didn't know it, but beneath the surface, Cedric's ambition had reached new heights. While he continued to win the city's trust and admiration, he had secretly entangled himself in a world far darker than anyone could imagine. His political influence and power were being used to run a dangerous drug trafficking ring, cleverly disguised as city contracts and bribery. But this dangerous double life was far from visible to those closest to him. To Vanessa, Cedric was still the man she married, until things began to subtly shift. Despite their outward image of perfection, something inside their family had begun to change. Behind the scenes, Cedric's late-night meetings and unexplained absences began to raise questions, though Vanessa remained unaware of the depths of his secret life. For now, she was still the devoted wife standing by his side, and Cedric was still the family man, keeping his darkest secrets locked away in the shadows. Vanessa Patterson had always prided herself on being a supportive and loyal wife to Cedric, attending every event, managing his schedule, and handling his political business. She had been more than just the mayor's wife, she was his partner in every sense. Over the years, Vanessa had become so familiar with the inner workings of Cedric's political career that she knew his campaign finances inside and out. She could recognize every contract, every city project, and even the smallest donations from supporters. One afternoon, while organizing files in Cedric's home office, his private sanctuary where he rarely allowed anyone, even her, to disturb, Vanessa stumbled upon something that immediately piqued her curiosity. It wasn't unusual for Cedric to keep a cluttered office, but this time, something stood out. Behind a stack of campaign reports, she found a small, nondescript ledger tucked away in a drawer that she'd never seen before. At first, she thought it might be a personal finance ledger for the campaign, maybe even a new way Cedric was organizing his finances. But as she flipped through the pages, the entries quickly became strange and disjointed. There were numbers, names, and dates that didn't make sense. One entry caught her eye immediately: shipment number 42, 15 kilograms to Miami, payment received via Cayman account. She turned the page, and there it was again, another shipment, another offshore account, and a long list of bribes made to city officials under the guise of contract work and consulting fees. Vanessa's heart skipped a beat. She recognized many of the names: local businessmen, political figures, even some of Cedric's closest allies, whose involvement in this scheme had to be more than just coincidental. Her mind raced, trying to process the gravity of what she was seeing. This wasn't about campaign finances or legitimate city work. These were records of illegal drug shipments, bribes, and money laundering. The stakes were higher than she had ever imagined. Panicked and shaking, Vanessa knew that she couldn't just ignore what she had discovered. She had to confront Cedric. She immediately went to find him, praying she was wrong, hoping it was some kind of misunderstanding. But when she confronted him with the ledger, Cedric's reaction was far from the calm, reassuring demeanor she had known. His face went pale, and his once confident voice faltered as he tried to explain. "Vanessa, you don't understand," he started, his tone defensive. This is just business. It's for the family, for our future. You can't be involved in this." Vanessa's shock quickly turned to anger. She felt betrayed, her entire world crumbling around her. "Business?" she spat. "Drug shipments, offshore accounts? Is this how you've been serving the people of Birmingham, Cedric? All this time, I've stood by your side, supported you, believed in you, and this is what you've been doing?" Cedric's eyes darkened as he stepped toward her, his expression hardening. "Listen to me. You can't tell anyone about this. If you do, it will ruin everything, our family, our lives. We'll both lose everything, Vanessa. Do you want that?" Vanessa stood her ground, her mind racing, her pulse quickening. "You think I'm going to sit back and let you destroy us? I'll go to the FBI if I have to. I'll expose everything you've been hiding unless you stop all this." For a moment, there was silence. Cedric's face twisted in a mix of fear and anger, and in that moment, Vanessa knew there was no turning back. The man she had married, the man she had trusted, was not the man she thought he was. But even as she threatened to expose him, something in Cedric's eyes told her that he was willing to do anything, to protect his secret life. For weeks, Vanessa couldn't shake the horror of the discovery. Each day that passed with Cedric's increasing silence felt like another weight added to her chest. She had made her intentions clear: if he didn't end his illegal operations, she'd report him to the authorities. She would expose everything: the bribes, the drug shipments, the money laundering. It didn't matter that they had 2 children together or that their life in the public eye had been spotless, none of that mattered anymore. But Cedric, ever the calculating politician, didn't believe for a second that Vanessa would follow through. He saw her as a supportive wife, one who would never risk everything they had built. He'd always been able to manipulate her emotions and fears in the past, and this time, he believed she'd back down, just as she had before. But Vanessa was resolute. She was no longer the naive woman who'd married him all those years ago. This was about survival, her survival, and that of their children. She continued to push him, relentlessly demanding that he shut down the operation, that he return to being the man he once was, the man she thought she knew. Every confrontation was met with silence, deflection, or anger from Cedric. But she refused to relent. With every passing day, her threats became more insistent, more desperate. "You need to end this, Cedric," she warned him, her voice low and controlled. "I'm not afraid to go to the police. I'll make sure everyone knows what you've been doing. I won't keep quiet anymore." Despite her threats, Cedric remained calm, but there was a growing tension in the air, something darker. He knew that Vanessa wouldn't back down this time. She had seen too much, and she wasn't going to forget it. But deep down, Cedric was never going to give up his empire, the power, the money, the control. Feeling cornered and desperate, Cedric turned to a man he had known for years, Tyrell T-Rex Johnson, a ruthless hitman with a reputation for carrying out clean jobs. Tyrell had been involved in Cedric's criminal operations before, eliminating rivals, cleaning up loose ends, and making sure no one got in the way of the money. He had the skills, the experience, and the detachment needed for the job. Cedric contacted Tyrell, knowing what he had to do. There was no way out for him. If Vanessa exposed him, it would destroy everything: his career, his wealth, his freedom. The plan was set. Tyrell was to stage Vanessa's murder as a home invasion gone wrong. It would be messy enough to look like a random act of violence, but clean enough to leave no trace that Cedric had ordered it. Tyrell didn't ask questions, he was a man of business. The contract was clear. Meanwhile, Vanessa had reached her breaking point. She had been threatening Cedric for weeks, and he still hadn't backed down. He was playing a dangerous game of cat and mouse, pretending to listen but never truly changing his ways. Her resolve hardened as she realized that he would never let this go, he would never stop. Desperate, Vanessa reached out to her best friend, Lisa Holloway, a lawyer in Birmingham who had always been her confidant. At 38, Lisa was no stranger to the darker side of life, having worked with her fair share of criminals. But she had always known Cedric as the successful mayor, the charming, polished leader. She never would have imagined him capable of the horrors Vanessa was now revealing. Over a quiet dinner at Lisa's apartment, Vanessa spilled everything. The ledgers. The bribes. The drug shipments. She told Lisa about Cedric's plans to keep the operation running, no matter what. "I can't live like this anymore, Lisa," Vanessa whispered, her voice shaking with emotion. "He won't stop, and I can't just let him get away with it. I've got to take him down." Lisa's eyes widened with concern. "Are you sure about this, V? You have to think about the kids, and about you. If you go to the police, it could ruin everything. You have to be careful." But Vanessa was determined. She knew the risks, and she understood that there was no going back. In the days following her conversation with Lisa, she began to notice things that she hadn't before. A car lingering across the street, a figure watching her from a distance. At first, she thought it was just paranoia. But the more she saw, the more she realized something was off. She had no idea that Tyrell had already begun his surveillance on her. Tyrell was a pro. He had been paid to track her, to learn her routine, to find the perfect moment when the time would be right. Every detail was mapped out, the school drop-offs, the grocery store visits, the late nights at home. He knew her schedule by heart, and he was patient. The plan would be executed perfectly, with no room for error. As Cedric continued to lead his public life, playing the role of the charming mayor, his secret life was closing in around him. Vanessa's threats, her growing defiance, and the tension between them only made him more desperate to protect himself. And the more he tried to control Vanessa, the more he pushed her toward a decision that would ultimately lead to his downfall. Vanessa was running out of time, and she didn't even realize it. It had been an exhausting week for Vanessa. Her hands trembled as she sifted through piles of documents in her home office, sorting through the evidence she had meticulously gathered to bring to the authorities. Every page held the key to exposing Cedric's empire, and she knew that once she handed it over, their entire world would unravel. She was ready to risk everything, her marriage, her reputation, even her safety, for justice. But as the clock ticked late into the night, Vanessa couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Her eyes darted to the window every few minutes, half expecting to see a car lurking in the shadows. The weight of knowing Cedric was capable of anything sat heavily on her chest. She had to act fast, but she couldn't afford to make a mistake. Unbeknownst to Vanessa, Tyrell had been watching her every move for days. As soon as he saw her working late into the night, he knew it was the perfect moment. He had already scoped out the house, familiarized himself with the layout, and had a clear plan to neutralize her without leaving a trace. There was no turning back now. Vanessa was in her home office, gathering documents she planned to bring to her meeting with Lisa Holloway. The two had arranged to discuss Vanessa's next steps in exposing Cedric's crimes. She felt a mix of anxiety and determination as she sifted through the evidence she had compiled, coded ledgers, offshore account details, and proof of Cedric's drug empire disguised as city contracts. Every piece of paper in front of her was a threat to Cedric's carefully constructed world. Unbeknownst to Vanessa, Tyrell T-Rex Johnson had already broken into the house. Wearing gloves and a ski mask, he moved silently, searching for her. Cedric's instructions had been clear: make it quick and make it look like a robbery gone wrong. Tyrell had no qualms about following orders. After all, this wasn't his first time eliminating someone for Cedric. Vanessa heard a faint sound from the hallway and froze. She brushed it off as the house settling, her mind too preoccupied to entertain her rising fear. Tyrell found her in the home office, hunched over the damning evidence that would bring Cedric's empire crashing down. Vanessa turned around just as Tyrell raised his gun. Her eyes widened in shock, and before she could scream or plead, he pulled the trigger. The shot rang out, and Vanessa slumped over the desk, blood staining the papers she had risked everything to gather. Tyrell quickly went to work, staging the scene. He grabbed Vanessa's phone, laptop, and other personal devices, shoving them into a bag to make it appear like a robbery. He knocked over furniture, broke a vase, and ransacked drawers to sell the illusion. Satisfied that everything looked convincing, he slipped out of the house unnoticed. Meanwhile, Lisa was growing increasingly concerned. Vanessa was never one to miss a meeting, especially something as critical as this. Lisa tried calling her multiple times, but each attempt went straight to voicemail. Her unease grew, and she decided to drive over to Vanessa's house to check on her. When Lisa arrived, she immediately noticed the front door slightly ajar. Stepping inside, she was greeted by the unsettling sight of broken furniture and scattered belongings. She called out for Vanessa, her voice trembling, but the house was silent. Following her instincts, Lisa made her way to the home office. Her heart dropped when she saw Vanessa slumped over the desk, lifeless, with blood pooling around her. Overwhelmed with shock and grief, she dialed 911. The police arrived and quickly cordoned off the scene. Initial observations pointed to a home invasion gone wrong, consistent with the signs of forced entry and the missing valuables. Surveillance footage from the neighborhood showed a masked intruder entering and exiting the house, but the grainy quality made it impossible to identify him. Vanessa's murder sent shockwaves through the community, but Cedric Patterson's public persona remained U-High-likes untarnished. Investigators began probing his finances, political dealings, and connections, spurred on by Lisa's insistence that Vanessa's death was no mere robbery. However, every lead they pursued hit a dead end, blocked by Cedric's meticulous planning, wealth, and influence. As the mayor of Birmingham, Cedric had carefully cultivated allies in high places. Connections within law enforcement and the judicial system ensured that any investigation into him moved at a snail's pace. Even the payments to Tyrell Johnson, which seemed damning at first glance, were easily dismissed as consulting fees for city contracts. Cedric's legal team, composed of the best attorneys money could buy, made sure no allegation could stick. Lisa continued to push for justice, turning over every piece of information Vanessa had shared with her. She provided investigators with details about the coded ledgers, the offshore accounts, and Cedric's shady dealings, but Cedric's power made it almost impossible to move forward. Each time the police attempted to follow up on a lead, they were met with roadblocks, key witnesses suddenly became uncooperative, and documents mysteriously disappeared. Cedric's influence ran so deep that even some investigators started to doubt Lisa's claims, questioning whether she was simply grasping at straws out of grief. Meanwhile, Cedric played the part of a grieving husband perfectly. At Vanessa's funeral, he stood stoic beside his children, tears streaming down his face as he delivered a heartfelt eulogy. The public rallied behind him, mourning the loss of the beloved mayor's wife and denouncing the so-called robber who had taken her life. Cedric used the tragedy to his advantage, leveraging the sympathy of the public to strengthen his political image. Behind the scenes, Cedric was growing more confident that he had gotten away with everything. Tyrell, though on the run, had done his job well, and Cedric had ensured there were no loose ends tying him to Vanessa's murder. The police were left chasing shadows, while Cedric continued to live his life as though nothing had happened. Lisa, however, refused to give up. She began reaching out to journalists, hoping to bring public scrutiny to Cedric's actions. But even the media seemed hesitant to go after the powerful mayor. Despite Lisa's relentless efforts, Cedric's wealth and power shielded him from justice. The police eventually closed Vanessa's case, ruling it as a botched robbery, while Cedric continued his public life unscathed. Lisa, heartbroken and exhausted, vowed to keep Vanessa's memory alive, though her attempts to expose Cedric faded into silence. Cedric, confident in his untouchable status, returned to his double life, carrying the secret of his wife's murder to the grave. Some rises to power come with shadows too dark to ignore. Cedric Patterson's meteoric ascent as Birmingham's beloved mayor masked a sinister truth, and his eventual downfall reveals just how far some will go to protect their secrets. Vanessa's tragic fight against the man she once trusted shows us that even when justice feels out of reach, courage has a way of leaving its mark. What do you think? Was Vanessa truly blindsided by Cedric's actions, or did she ignore the signs for too long? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story left you stunned, don't forget to like and subscribe to Crime Chronicles for more tales that pull back the curtain on betrayal, corruption, and the shocking truths people will do anything to hide.